Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I have been lurking on X for about a year now, so this will be my first post. This is not my story, but a homeless man that used to be in my town. I was just casually talking to this man one day after giving him some canned food, and he brought this story up. He specified that he's only did THC wax when he was a teenager, and is not messed up in the mind or an alcoholic. I'm sure he's fine because at the time he worked at some fast food place. As usual, this story will be in Greentext. Please tell me if you want to hear the rest, and sorry for taking so long to get to the story. Be homeless, man. Dad just died and got kicked out of his house due to the government owning the land or something like that. Still have a job but no home, go to friends trying to get a place to stay. No one would take me in, so I started sleeping on park benches until officers started warning me for loitering. Eventually find an abandoned bus and stay there for a week until some people find me there and kick me out. Thank God they didn't call the police. I start asking around for abandoned places that I could stay, and eventually get told about a house in the woods not too far away from town. I head there to check it out. The place is relatively fine, the boarded up windows are broken. The homeless man specified that there was a lot of graffiti but no demon symbols or anything like that, which is weird because edgy teens do that to everything. I decide to spend the night in the living room where it has a fireplace. I lit a fire and set up a shitty tent I made from old sheets and blankets. The front door was broken down so I could hear the insects outside chirping and buzzing. I go to sleep reluctantly and I wake up in the middle of the night to my fire being out. My fire has gone out and the woods are quiet. There's some subconscious response to absolute silence when in a forest. Nothing happened besides me having the ever-burning sensation of being watched. I respect the forest and know that we aren't welcome in them, and if you mess with it and its balance, you will get absolutely screwed for doing so. I don't go back to sleep and eventually go to work in the morning. Skipping a few days, he didn't specify. Few days in and some teens decided to do some urban exploring and catch me in the middle of a meal. They scare the crap out of me and I scare the crap out of them. No one is hurt and I offer them something to eat. Of course they reject me because I'm a dirty hobo, but they go on their way. Skipping a few days, he didn't specify. One night the woods go quiet while I'm eating some Chef Boyardee. It's not just silence. It's absolute dead silence. The silence we all subconsciously know what it means. I then hear this from the second floor, which I didn't explore because I didn't trust in the building's structural integrity. I'm reluctant to go up there, but I bring a homemade machete made of a lawnmower blade I found in the woods. He had this machete with him when he told me this story, and this thing was gnarly looking. It kind of looked like pick-related, but electric tape on the handle, and the blade had a ton of dents in it. I go upstairs down a hallway where the thudding is coming from. It's coming from the farthest room, and the door is wide open. I made the choice of going in. As soon as I do, my body regrets instantly. A crouched, grayish-blue-skinned human is slamming its hands on the floor. It's bald, and I can see its rib cage through its skin. This thing looks like its starving man that drowned. I make some noise. He doesn't specify. And the thing wraps its head around so fast its eyes are just black pits with no eyeballs at all. Its teeth were tiny yellow needles. The homeless man teared up at this point and was visibly disturbed. He described the mouth of the creature as its gums being blackish-brown with jagged yellow needle teeth. I bolt down the stairs as I hear the thing screech behind me. This thing is fast and it grabs me by the leg. I turn and swing my machete into its side, slicing it open. It bites my leg, biting off a chunk. I swing like a caveman at the creature until I catch it in the neck. It lets go and I run out. Like I said, I don't know if he was a drugged-out hobo, but it was still a scary story. I know it was short, but that's all the man told me. This all took place in Tennessee, and as far as I know, the only cryptids there are the Tennessee Wildman, bright red hair Sasquatch pretty much, and caveman, a weird bear thing with a man's face. Something similar has also been supposedly found in Germany. What should this thing be called? Tennessee tiny teeth. I have heard some talk about a certain Navajo creature migrating east, but I'm not sure if anyone in Tennessee has seen one.
Hi X, a little while back we had a hobo and homeless story thread. I'd like to hear more, paranormal or not. I'll share mine. About 2 years ago. Bumming around on the beaches of Maryland playing guitar for money. It's senior week, so K up the Sublime covers. Had a good night, went to a local's house to buy pot and grab a 40 all as well, and I met up with Trash Bro. He played the trash can drums. We were hiding out in the dunes around Ocean City, Maryland. Small fire, 2 single tents. We smoked, drank our 40, and ate, then went to bed. I woke up at about 3 a.m. by rustling around the camp. I jumped out of my tent with my beating club in fear I'm getting robbed. Again. All I see is this man sitting by the fire. He turned around to see me. He was old, dirty, but what was odd was his clothes looked new. Not 20th century style, but old school, dirt bowl hobo. This guy was right out of a Woody Guthrie song. "Sorry, fella, didn't mean to scare you. Can I stay by your fire? The name's Nasty, George." "Sure, why not, .gif." I see him notice my guitar. "You play?" "I dabble in the arts myself. Mind if I try?" Hand him my guitar, and this guy just breaks out the most entrancing blues I've ever heard. That style, that technique, that smoothness. The night went great from there. We laughed and shared experiences. No matter how loud we got, it never woke up Trash Bro, who's a light sleeper. The sun's about to come up, and I asked him if he wanted to smoke another. "Sure, pal." Went to my tent only for a second, turned around, and he's gone. No footprints, no sounds, just gone. I had more fun in those 4 hours I chilled with him than my entire time in Maryland.
My friends and I get together every Friday. We watch movies, eat tacos, get drunk. It's fun times. Most of them live within a reasonable walking distance of my house, and only 2 of them have cars, so they usually walk or bike home late at night. No dangerous incidents have occurred thus far. Yesterday, one of them got drunk and walked home. On his way home, he says he saw one of the familiar homeless men that live in the woods or abandoned buildings nearby. He said it was Treebeard, an enigmatic hobo that lives in the woods near the park. He has a big, bushy beard, is rotund, and really tan. Maybe he's of Middle Eastern or Native American descent. He's not especially tall or large. He doesn't hold up signs or beg. We honestly have no idea how he makes a living. Apparently, Treebeard was sitting on a bench in the park when a dog of some sort approached him. The dog stared at him for a while, and then Treebeard stood up and started walking with the dog. My friend swears that for a split second before Treebeard left his line of sight, he suddenly contorted his form. He became gaunt and limber, dropped down to all 4s, and he and the dog began racing off into woods. My friend freaked out and ran the rest of the way home. My friend told us about this on Facebook this morning, and he swears this couldn't have been a result of his intoxication. He claims he wasn't drunk enough. Of course, nobody believes him, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of my doubt, since this isn't the first time someone has reported seeing something strange that involved Treebeard. My cousin is terrified of the man. He claims that when he was a child playing in the park, he saw Treebeard leap 6 or 8 feet off the ground and snatch a low-flying bird out of the air with his mouth. The other homeless men in the area, some of whom are themselves seemingly dangerous drug addicts, give Treebeard a wide berth. They seem worried by his presence. The woods in the park where Treebeard lives have a strict no camping, no overnight stay, no squatting policy. And yet, as far as I can tell, Treebeard is just allowed to remain there. Treebeard doesn't own any pets or anything, but he's frequently seen with dogs, cats, and in one case, a coyote. He just kind of sits with them for a while. Some people claim that he talks to them, quietly muttering or whispering while they sit together. But those people are usually horrible gossips who probably just want to make him seem crazy. My aunt claims that my family is actually distantly related to Treebeard, although I was never told how, and my parents deny it. She went on to claim that Treebeard had anxiety or social problems, which escalated until he just gave up his life, walked into the woods, and became a hobo hermit. If she's telling the truth, his real name is Alan, but no one else seems to call him that. Despite these claims, he's reasonably friendly, especially for a scary homeless person. He doesn't seem unstable or dangerous. People occasionally converse with him, and he's always civil and polite, if occasionally unintelligible. What do you guys think about this? Should I talk to Treebeard about this incident?
Are there more stories of Treebeard? Deeply interested in this.
A few, but I personally have never experienced anything paranormal or supernatural, let alone things specifically involving Treebeard. All the stories are hearsay and don't really have any evidence to back them up, so it's hard to tell which, if any, have truth to them. A woman called the police on Treebeard once, claiming he was acting in a threatening manner towards her while she was sitting at a bus stop. The police sent someone, but when they arrived on the scene, he was gone. The woman claimed that he had been sitting across the street, smiling widely with a wild look in his eyes, making gruff noises. She yelled at him to stop, and he responded by barking aggressively at her. That's when she called the police. She says he wandered into an alley nearby. The police went to check for him, but all they found was a stray dog. He went missing for about 2 weeks when I was still in high school. Neither I or my friends saw him during the duration of that time. It was the only time he'd ever done that. We assumed he had moved on or died, or was just spending all of his time in his woodland home, but showed up again, fine as he can be. I wanted to ask him where he'd been, but decided it was none of my business. Okay, so I think I may have screwed up with Treebeard. I don't think I'm in any danger or anything, since Treebeard doesn't seem dangerous at all, but I think I might have made him mad. I'm going to type the whole story out, and then post it all back to back. It'll probably take a few minutes. All right, here we go. Got curious. So this afternoon, in broad daylight, I took a walk around town and went to the areas Treebeard typically visits, with the intent of talking to him. He wasn't sitting down by any streets or lurking in any alleys, so I decided to check out the park. He was there. I approach him, as friendly as I can be. I knew it would be kind of weird to just walk up and say, "Hey, me and my friends have been watching you since we were kids, and one of them says you can shapeshift into a big dog. Haha, is that true?" So I decided to ask him about my friend's dog. My friend has a dog. It went missing about a week ago. It was a rescue pit bull mutt, and it was a nice dog, but it's dumb as hell. He left it outside one night because it pissed in the house, and it got out. It hasn't been found by anyone yet, as far as he can tell, and he just now started putting up posters looking for the thing. Pick related. It's what the dog looked like. Anyway, that was my icebreaker. I walked up to Treebeard, who was sitting on a park bench staring intently at some ducks. "Hey, excuse me," I said. I asked him if he had seen a dog recently. He turned his whole body towards me, shifting on the bench without moving his neck, and then stared for a somewhat uncomfortable period of time. He said I looked familiar. "Well, I've lived here all my life," I explained, "and that I've seen him around town before too." He stared for a little while, then asked what kind of dog I was looking for and why. I described the dog to him, and he sat there and nodded the whole time, looking me in the eyes through his thick facial hair and old baseball cap. He raised his finger as I described the dog and how it had gone missing, and just said, totally calmly, "What is your name?" I tell him I'm Anon and ask him for his. "Nice to meet you, Anon. I'm Alan," he says. A-L-L-E-N, Alan, not L-A-N, Alan. I must have widened my eyes or something, because he squinted and asked if something was wrong. I said no, it's just that my aunt said she thought you were named something like that once, when we saw you together. He raised his eyebrow and said something along the lines of, "Is that right?" I explained how my aunt told me we were, like, distantly related or something, and he chuckled, kind of unsettlingly, since he hadn't talked or moved much before. "How's that?" he asked me. I told him I didn't know and tried to move on, but he raised his finger again to interrupt me and asked my last name. I didn't really see the harm in telling him, so I did. He sat there and thought for a minute, then asked me if I knew my great-grandfather. Well, he didn't ask if I knew my great-grandfather. He asked if I knew insert great-grandpa's name here. I told him I did, that he was my grand-grandpa, and he started laughing again. Apparently, when my great-grandpa died, Treebeard's father was also a widower, and he had married my great-grandma. So we are kind of related, I guess, if only by marriage. I laughed with him, did the generic, "that's so weird" body language, with the wide stance and hands on my hips and shit. So I got back to talking about the dog, and when I was done, he nodded a little and then said he'd keep an eye out for it. I said thanks, and I reached out my hand. He flinched a little, which made me flinch a little. We stared for a minute, then he chuckled real slightly and shook my hand. I told him he seemed like a really great guy, that I was sorry I'd never talked to him before. He said he didn't blame me and that he understood that homeless people can be kind of frightening, especially an old guy like him. That's when I saw my opportunity, and I took it. "Yeah," I said, "I've heard some weird stories from people around town. Just a bunch of BS, I'm sure." He looked back towards the lake, then back up at me. "What kind of stuff?" he asked. He seemed kind of tense, and even if he wasn't dangerous, I didn't want to bother him or make him sad, so I kind of regretted pointing it out, but it was too late to go back now. I laughed a little to try to smooth the air, then said, My cousin's convinced you have superhuman strength and eat seagulls to sustain yourself." He stared for a minute, then started giggling. Not chuckling or laughing or chortling or anything, it was giggling the way I little kid does. He was really amused, and I guess it was kind of funny, so I started laughing too. "Well, I can tell you that ain't true," he said. I say I know, I figured it wasn't, but that there was just this kind of urban myth or whatever about him. He laughed more. I laughed too. He asked what else people thought. "Well, one guy I talked to sometimes says that he was walking home one night and watched you turn into a wolf or something," I say, and laugh for a second. Then Treebeard stopped laughing and just kind of stared at me. I choked on my laugh and gulped. "A wolf?" he asked, looking completely sincere. "Yeah," I said. He just kept staring at me, really intensely, kind of frighteningly, and in that silence I realized there was a really big storm picking up. I realized that was probably a good excuse, so I told him, "You know, I should probably get going. It's gonna storm soon." He just looked away, into the woods, and sat there for a minute. Then he mumbled something that sounded like something something a wolf, something something dog. He seemed tense and bothered, and maybe even a little pissed. I excused myself and told him I hoped he got somewhere dry before the storm, trying to sound as little like a jackass as I can. Then I turned and started to walk away. "Hey, Anon!" I heard from behind me, and I turned around really fast. Treebeard is standing next to the park bench, and he's staring at me as the wind starts to pick up. "Are you sure your friend said wolf?" he asks. Honestly, he didn't, so I answered, "No, come to think of it. He said it was more like a dog or coyote." "And I shit you not," he smiled. It wasn't an "oh, that's so funny" smile, or an angry smile, or a crazy smile, or anything like that. That smile was pure relief. "All right, thanks." He said it was nice talking to me, and I said the same thing back, and then I walked home. The whole way home, I rationalize things away, then contradict or counter myself, and have a whole big argument in my head about whether or not Alan the Treebeard is a shapeshifter. The storm really picked up, so I ended up hurrying home. The whole way home, I occasionally get the feeling that I'm being followed. When I look over my shoulder, no one's there, so I assume it's just paranoia. The storm's raging outside, so I can't really make out much of anything, but it looks like, down the street from my house, sitting under an illuminated bus stop, there is a big dog sitting there staring down the street, right at my house. I'm going to try to get a picture or something, but they all keep coming out black as hell or too blurry to use, and I don't want to go out in the rain. All my doors are locked, windows too. I don't think he'd hurt me, if he is that dog. He doesn't seem violent, but I do feel weirdly frightened by the dog. There's something eerie about it. There's everything eerie about it.
The scariest homeless person experience I've had was being a homeless person. There is nothing in this world as awful and scary as being treated like lesser than another human being, like not even existing. If I didn't have the 1 or 2 friends I had then, I would have ended myself. They aren't a freak show to be exploited or normalized because they're not privileged. They're human beings. I'd also like to stress that other homeless people I knew were the kindest people I've met to date. Sure, some were addicted to drugs, but they looked out for each other because they had no one else. I knew a guy who hung out with druggies because they were nice to him, not because he did drugs himself. I have my own place now, and if I ever met that guy again, I'd offer him a room. It's just heartbreaking when you actually buckle down and see these people for who they are. It is probably the most stressful state of living that I've ever experienced, and I do feel bad for a lot of people in that position. I've experienced it myself, but the area I live in now, to the homeless people, are very nice and kind. They will still take our mail and get slightly frustrated when you legitimately don't have anything to give them at the moment, which is understandable. It's not that I condone the actions, but I also can understand where they come from. Only thing that got me mad with this crackhead and my neighbor is this. It is probably the most stressful state of living that I've ever experienced, and I do feel bad for a lot of people in that position. I have experienced it myself, but the area I live in now, the homeless people are very nice and kind. They will still take our mail and get slightly frustrated when you legitimately don't have anything to give them at the moment, which is understandable. It's not that I condone the actions, but I also can understand where they come from. Only thing that got me mad was one of the crackheads that stayed outside of my neighborhood because their dealers here took with that I had gotten mail to me from across the country that I have been eagerly waiting for due to being in quarantine. But again, thinking about if I was in their shoes, what a score. Sorry I have to use voice to text on an iPad. TLDR, basically been homeless myself. Homeless people around me are mostly crackheads, but are bearable. And the only thing that pissed me off recently was having one take some weed from the package I had shipped to me. But other than that, around here in the South, being homeless is not profitable at all. Unlike when you're on the West Coast, you can at least make a bit more money. But over here, people actively try to get you arrested because they think that you are unsightly, or they're afraid of you.
I traveled the land for a bit before, went with the homeless, with beggars, with drug addicts. Hookers, not anything nutty, just hanging out in between their pickups, chatting, and just wanted to understand them, really. Choices and so on, and even the pimps, LOL, went to soup kitchens, talked to the less fortunate, to tripping and schizophrenics, really weird, nonsensical subjects and some deep stuff, logical and so ordinary. Kind of wanted to be at least once in everyone's shoes. It was thrilling and yet so creepy. Most of the people were very mentally ill, lost creatures just living their days much like most others in a repetitive routine. There are some really out there Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs people. I always made sure I would not cut them off or dismiss them, and I always shared my money with the wanderers. The streets are crazy. Frankly, the whole world is nuts and the people are oddballs. You learn a lot when you just take the time to talk. Seems to me that everyone is a little broken in one way or another, obviously some more than others. It's kind of a sad revelation, but also beautiful in a way. How we're all in this together, how we're connected even when we consider ourselves alone or separate.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.